Hey guys, as we wind down tonight, we settle into a cramped Roman workshops, smoky and stuffed with more sandals than sense. The air smells of boiled glue, hot leather, and whatever your neighbor's goat dragged in. You sit cross-legged on a cracked stone floor, squinting in the half-light, trimming a sole that someone will complain about tomorrow. Your hands are calloused, your knees ache like forgotten ruins. And your only break today was to curse quietly when you dropped your all into a bucket of pig urine used to soften hides. You're a shoemaker, which sounds fine until you realize half your customers have opinions. None have clean feet. Every patrician thinks sandals should last forever and smell like politics. You might not survive this one, but at least your feet will be stylish on the way out. So, before you settle in, feel free to give the video a like and hit subscribe if you'll be truly enjoying the journey. You can also leave a comment. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. It's always a small wonder to see people tuning in from so many corners of the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that gentle hum in the background. And together, let's ease into tonight's story. You begin your day not with ambition, but with sore fingers, stale bread, and the overwhelming certainty that someone will yell at you by noon. You're a shoemaker in ancient Rome, technically a craftsman, practically a cushion for complaints. Your tools are simple: knife, all thread, and the deeply suppressed hope that no one brings in another foot shaped like a tragic pear. This isn't the glamorous Rome of togas and triumphs. It's the Rome of endless dust, overpriced dye, and sandals that fall apart if the client sneezes too hard. You thought shoemaking would be peaceful. Instead, it's a parade of bunions, blisters, and wealthy senators who think custom means I want it yesterday, for free, and made of gold. Your workshop is half cave, half closet. Smells of glue, fumes, and ambition turn slightly sour. The leather is either too dry or too wet. The thread is never where you left it. The cat is asleep on your best sole. And yet you keep stitching, because sandals don't make themselves. Rome never stops walking. You wake up before the sun, not because you're disciplined, but because the chickens have opinions and the neighbor's dog has declared war on sleep itself. Your back cracks like a snapped reed as you sit up from the mat straw-filled bug-rich and perfumed in the scent of centuries. You rub your eyes, already stinging from yesterday's glue fumes that linger like a vengeful spirit. Your feet hit the floor stone cold and predictably damp. The ceiling of your Domus rental creaks above, leaking in rhythm with your motivation. You dress by habit, not hope. A wool tunic with a patch shaped like Italy if you squint. It smells faintly of vinegar and aggressively of feet. You tried to wash it last week, but the Tiber has its limits, and you suspect you only made it worse. There's no breakfast. There's crust. No. The edge of yesterday's bread, harder than your life choices, and twice as dry. Maybe you imagined the weevil. Maybe it winked at you. Either way, you chew and pretend it's protein. Maybe today will be better. No. The cat vomits next to your sandal rack, right on the pair you stayed up late to finish. You sigh, and the day begins. The workshop is one long corridor of disappointment. Scraps of leather are piled in corners like bad decisions. Half a cowhide sags over your workbench like it regrets being useful. There's the awl, your oldest companion. Blunt, splintered, and so essential, it should probably be on your family altar. You give it a quick kiss knot out of affection, but because it's the only reliable thing in your life. The glue pot simmers on a brick stove in the corner. Shouldn't breathe it in, but you do. The fumes rise in slow, sticky spirals, clinging to your lungs like the ghost of your career options. It smells like boiled bones and bad memories. You stir it gently with a stick that used to be part of a spear, back when you thought you'd be a soldier. Turns out sandals are easier to stab. Your first client arrives. A merchant. Broad, loud, and smelling like spiced garum and self-importance. He slaps a sandal on your bench and says it fell apart on its own. You resist the urge to point out the teeth marks. You ask how often he wears them. Only for walking, he says. You nod slowly. Wondering if he also uses cups only for drinking. You take the sandal. One strap's torn, the sole is cracked, and someone has clearly attempted a home repair using what looks like fish gut and spite. You say it'll take a few hours. He says he needs it in one. You say that's not possible. He smiles. He means to threaten, but it mostly looks like constipation. You agree to an hour. He leaves. You sigh. Again, you reach for the knife. Not for him. For the sandal, you begin the delicate operation of unstitching what someone else tried to. Fixed with needlework that looks like it was done by a goat during an earthquake. The leather is dry to dry and flakes under your fingers like it's auditioning for a Roman tragedy. You try to patch it with a sliver of hide you'd been saving for someone who might actually pay on time. But of course, they never do. Your fingers ache. They always do. Shoemaking is delicate, precise, and ruinous to hands. Your knuckles are permanently stiff. Your nails are one bad day away from declaring independence, and every cut is seasoned with salt from your own sweat. You wonder if this is what the gods meant when they said labor brings dignity? Maybe they meant dignity to someone else. Not you. A child bursts in. Your apprentice. Maybe yours. Maybe borrowed. Possibly just a neighborhood urchin who never left. He hands you a list scrawled on cheap wax tablet. It's from a senator's wife. She wants 4 pairs of shoes. 1 for her, 1 for her slave, 1 for her statue, and 1 for her dog. The dog, you are told, prefers red. You read the list twice. You weep inside once. The senator's wife does not pay in coin. She pays in exposure. You will be known across the forum. You are already known across the forum as that man who smells like boiled hooves in despair. But you accept the order. Because sandals don't buy bread, and you haven't been paid in weeks. You send the apprentice child assistant thing to fetch more leather from the tannery. He groans. You ignore it. You groan too. He ignores it. A shared ritual. Tannery is your least favorite place. Stinks like a butcher shop had a bad breakup in a bog. Animal skins soak in vats of urine, ash, and whatever else the tanners haven't named out of mercy. The hides come out soft. You come out permanently traumatized. But it's the only way. You patch the merchant's sandal. Barely. It holds for now. You rub a little beeswax on the sole to make it shine. The trick is to make it look new without it actually being new. There's art in deception.
Ow.
But only if no one notices. You place it on the counter, just in time for him to return. Complain about the color being less confident and leave without paying. You don't yell, you just sigh. Again, midday comes. The sun bakes the street outside, and your workshop is now half woven, half sock. The leather warps slightly in the heat. You pray the senator's wife never notices. You drink from a clay jug of lukewarm water that tastes faintly of yesterday's onion. Your stomach growls. You ignore it. It's too late to cook, too early to starve. And there's still 4 more orders, 1 blistered foot, and a sandal that smells like destiny, or goat pee. It's hard to tell. You tell yourself you won't go today. Not again. It's not to that place. The tannery. By mid-morning, you're holding a sandal that desperately needs new sole leather. And your stockpile is nothing but offcuts, and a suspiciously furry scrap that may still be part of the animal. You stare at it for a moment. It stares back. Fine, you're going. You tie a rag around your face like a poorly informed bandit and set off, dragging your feet down alleys that reek of cabbage, sweat, and civic indifference. The tanners work just past the city's edge, where the wind has given up and the flies are unionized. The smell arrives long before the building does. It greets you like an old friend, with poor hygiene and strong opinions. A rancid cocktail of urine, dung, rotting flesh, and some scent that no human has yet classified. If the gods ever wanted to punish noses, this would be their temple. You step through the tannery gate, and the ground squelches ominously beneath your sandals. You try not to think about what's seeping through the soles. You fail. The apprentice still trailing behind gags audibly. You don't blame him. You did the same your first few visits, and second, and third. The hides hang on racks like ghost laundry, hair scraped off, skins stretched taut, drying in the sun like condemned parchment. Flies form angry constellations over every surface. A man nods at you from behind a vat. His name might be Marcus or Maggot or something else beginning with M and ending in nightmares. He's been soaking hides since Tiberius wore diapers. He gestures with a stick. Cow or goat, you'd blink. You'd like neither, but that's not an option. You say cow because it sounds more respectable, even though you know the difference barely matters by the time the leather reaches your bench. He hauls up a dripping piece with the enthusiasm of someone pulling a curse from a well, slaps onto the table, wet, heavy, warm. The hide steams slightly in the sun, like it's trying to return to the cow by evaporation. You pay him in coin that smells slightly better than the hide, and drag it home wrapped in an old tunic that didn't deserve this fate. The walk back is slower. The hide is heavy, and your shoulders ache like they've been borrowed from a much older man. Back at your workshop, you lay the leather out to dry. The smell doesn't fade, it clings, it has moved in. You catch your reflection in the water bowl. Your nose is wrinkled, your eyes are tired, and your face says, I have regrets. You splash water on your cheeks and return to the bench, pretending that you're not now the second worst smell in the room. You begin cutting the hide. Your knife glides unevenly. This batch is thicker than usual, tougher, like the cow had opinions. You trim a sole, soaking it briefly in a bucket of vinegar and water to soften it. Your fingers numb from holding it in place too long. You pause, you stretch, you hear your knees crack again. It's the same note as this morning. The glue pot beckons. You wish it wouldn't. Roman glue isn't romantic. It's not the elegant kind you imagine, poured delicately into a scroll tube with a wax seal and a wink. No. Roman glue is boiled hooves, fish bones, skin scraps, and the vague sense that everything in it once screamed. You stir it again, careful not to breathe too deeply. The smell is complex, like betrayal, boiled down and poured over failure. You apply it to the sole with a flattened stick. The glue coats your fingertips instantly. You try not to scratch your nose, but of course you do. You spend the next hour sneezing and sticking to yourself. The sandals won't hold unless you bind them. You wrap twine tightly around the new sole, securing it like a desperate toga. It needs to dry. You hang it up with clothespins stolen from your neighbor's laundry line, a fact that you regret, but not enough to return them. Another client arrives. She says her sandals make a squeaking noise. You inspect them? They do. It's not leather. It's her feet. You don't say that? You nod sympathetically. Tighten the straps, apply a dab of oil, and declare them cured. She tips you in leftover cheese. You eat the cheese. It is terrible. But it's food. There's a knock at the back, your landlord. You owe him rent. He reminds you, not unkindly, but with the tone of someone who will remove your door if pressed. You nod. You say next week. You both know that's optimistic. He leaves. You sigh. Again, a wealthy client is due tomorrow. You need to prepare. His feet are wide, obscenely so. Like he's been trying to colonize sidewalks. You cut out an oversized pair of soles, muttering under your breath with every slice. The leather resists, the all blunts. Your patience runs like a poorly made sandal, strapped thin, fraying, and one tug away from disaster. You've bled 3 times today. Not dramatically, just enough for your sleeves to develop a subtle pattern. Your hands are sticky with glue, speckled with dye, and one fingernail is now permanently purple from last month's walnut ink incident. Evening falls, the light fades. You work by lampa, cheap one, filled with olive oil that smells like ambition filtered through socks. Shadows dance across your bench. You stitch by feel, not sight. Your back protests. Your eyes blur. But you finish the day's pair. Sort of. One sandal is slightly crooked. You stare at it for a long time. You try to convince yourself it's artistic. You fail. Still, you line it up with the others. Tomorrow, you'll start again. You start the morning with a clean bench, a sharp awl, and just enough hope to be disappointed again. The first client arrives before you've even boiled the glue. He wears a tunic dyed so aggressively purple it might be illegal. He carries himself like a man who's never carried anything heavier than a scroll. He wants sandals that command respect. You ask if he means in a formal setting. He says no at the baths. You suggest a firm sole. Says that sounds too aggressive. You show him a soft leather strap. He frowns. That feels apologetic, he says. You offer something neutral. I don't want to look neutral, he hisses. I want to look deliberate. You make him a pair anyway. 3 straps, bronze studs. Slightly arched toe to give the illusion of movement, even when standing still. He returns the next day and says the sandals make him look like someone who reads philosophy instead of living it. You're right. Burn this design on a wax tablet and move on. The next client is more difficult. She wants sandals that make her feet look smaller, but her presence larger. You offer a minimal sole with high arch support. She says the arch feels judgmental. You try a curved toe with a wider band. She says it feels like it's hiding something. You make 4 versions. She picks the one you didn't recommend, declares it's subtly ambitious, and leaves without paying. She'll be back next week. They always come back usually when the straps start squeaking in public. Then there's the senator's son. He arrives with his entourage and 2 conflicting instructions. He wants sandals that say I belong, but also I rebel. You ask if he's sure. He nods without looking up from his silver coin. You give him a narrow-cut sole, dyed in ox blood, with soft straps that look casual but cost extra. He says it's too honest. You add gold trim. Says it's insecure. You remove it. He nods. Now it feels quietly powerful. You ask how it feels on his foot. He shrugs. No idea. Won't be walking. By now, you've developed a system. Clients don't want sandals. They want character arcs. One woman says she needs a pair that transitions from mourning to socializing without seeming inconsistent. A merchant asks for sandals that say wealth but not tax me. Another man asks for a design that says I've suffered, but only in tasteful ways. You don't know what any of it means, but you keep stitching. Your apprentice watches silently as you work through a list of requests that read like failed poems. One sandal must suggest loyalty, but only to the right side of a legal dispute. One must say I'm retiring, while another should say I'm only pretending to retire. You ask your apprentice what he thinks. He suggests firewood. You don't disagree. Then there's the general. Retired, massive, shaped like a collapsed statue. He wants sandals that make people remember he still owns 3 swords. You use thick leather, a square toe, and a heel sharp enough to imply consequences. He grunts approval. He leaves. He does not say thank you. That apparently would make him look vulnerable. The next client is his son. Thin, nervous. Asks for sandals that feel like silence. You give him soft soles, dyed in ash. He smiles. Says they're perfect. Then says he'll wear them to his father's funeral, whenever that may be. You pretend not to hear that part. By midday, you've gone through 11 consultations. You've heard the words delicate power 3 times, political texture twice, and ankle identity once, unironically. You write down notes on a wax tablet that now contains only despair and unfinished sketches. Your cat chews the corner of your sandal mold. You let him. He's earned it. Then a young boy arrives. Alone, no servants. Just bare feet, cracked and dusty. He asks for shoes that don't hurt. You nod. You measure his foot. You choose thick soles, double stitching, soft straps. He watches closely, says nothing. When you finish, he puts them on. 3 steps. Smiles. Says thank you. He's the only one who says thank you today. You sit at your bench as the sun starts to fade. The glue smells like old vinegar. Your fingers ache. The pile of rejected sandals leans slightly, like it might fall and take your dignity with it. Your apprentice asks if the day is over. You say yes. Then you write almost meaningful next to one of the designs from earlier. You sweep the floor. You hang the last pair near the window. You whisper to the tools, let tomorrow be boring. The awl wobbles slightly, as if it disagrees. You go to sleep knowing it won't be. Midday in Rome isn't so much a break as a boiling point. The sun turns your street into a baked clay oven, and the flies develop ambition. You sit hunched in the narrow shade of your doorway, bowl in hand, spoon made of wood, and hope made of denial. Lunch, such as it is, sits heavy in your bowl. Lentils, cold, overcooked, or undercooked. Hard to tell, they manage to be both at once. There's a slick of oil on top, like a promise never kept, and a single shred of what might have once been a carrot or a fingernail. You try not to think about it. You chew slowly. You swallow reluctantly. You tell yourself it's healthy. Tell yourself it's fuel. You tell yourself anything to avoid saying, this is sad bean paste that tastes like regret. The truth is, lentils are cheap, filling, and take exactly 3 hours to leave your body in protest. Occasionally, someone passes by your open workshop, one of your clients maybe, or a senator's bodyguard in sandals that you very specifically told him not to wear while marching uphill. He glares at you like it's your fault his toes are raw. You nod back politely, spoon halfway to your mouth. A merchant strolls by. He sells dates. He waves. You don't wave back. He still owes you for that pair of children's sandals he said were whispery. You didn't know sandals could whisper. You still don't, but he seemed convinced. The lentils continue to exist in your bowl. You keep eating them. Because what else is there, bread? You ran out 3 days ago. olives. Too expensive meat. Only if you catch a pigeon and hope no one sees. Your apprentice eyes your bowl with hope. You hand it over. He takes it with the kind of reverence usually reserved for offerings to household gods. He eats faster than he should. You say nothing? You remember being that hungry once? Remember being that hopeful, too? You pour a little water into your clay cup. It's warm, stale. Tastes faintly of the amphora. It came from one that had previously held pickled onions. Or maybe pickled disappointment. You sip slowly. You tell yourself it's refreshing. You lie. The glue pot bubbles gently behind you, not because it needs to, but because Rome doesn't believe in letting you enjoy anything in peace. The neighbor is arguing with someone again. You don't look. You already know. It's about a tunic left on the line, or a goat in the laundry, or someone's son sleeping in the wrong atrium. Again, someone shouts, "Thief!" No one moves. Probably a misunderstanding, or a pickpocket, or a political statement. You continue sipping. You glance back into your workshop. The shoes, wet, silent, accusing. They're never grateful. They never thank you. They just expect. You stretch your legs, they creak. Your knees make a sound like two scrolls crumpling in tandem. Your back joins in with a dramatic crack that startles a nearby pigeon. You try to stand fully upright. The gods laugh. Your lunch break ends. You sweep the lentil bowl crumbs from your lap, most of which have fused with your tunic. You pick off one, hesitate, and eat it, just to show dominance. Back inside, the air is thick with the familiar bouquet of leather, oil, sweat, and faint despair. You open the window. You regret it. The wind brings in dust, a bee, and someone's laundry. You close the window. You get back to work. The next pair is for a minor official with feet so wide you wonder how he fits through doors. His request? Sandals that make me look taller, but not insecure. You nod solemnly, as if this is a known category of footwear. You cut the soles with care, reinforce the straps with a layer of goat hide, slightly thicker than usual, stitch tightly so the sandals hold together under pressure, but not so tightly they squeak. You learn that the hard way. The last client who complained about squeaking returned his shoes with a note that read, "I sounded like a frightened mouse every time I turned a corner." You never recovered emotionally or financially. You're almost done when your apprentice asks about dinner. You glance at the nearly empty pantry shelf, 2 onions, half a loaf of bread that has developed an accent, and a small clay pot of mystery paste that you think was once cheese. You say, "We'll manage." He nods. You both know that means lentils again. You wrap up the last pair, wipe the glue from your fingers, successfully place the sandals in the completed pile, which leans slightly left, like it's tired too. The cat returns. It doesn't belong to you, but it keeps coming back. You call it demission because it ruins everything and expects praise. It curls up under the bench, staring with judgmental eyes and a tail that flicks like it's swatting invisible critics. You resume stitching. Another pair. Another client. Another hope for a coin that won't be counterfeit this time. Inside, someone is singing badly. A cart rolls by with squeaking wheels louder than your last customer's sandals. A dog barks. Another joins. Soon, it's a chorus. You keep stitching. The glue dries. The sandals wait. And the lentils. They're gone. But the dread, that lingers. There is a special kind of silence that comes right before someone blames you for something you definitely didn't. Do but no ULL have to fix anyway? It starts with footsteps. It's too firm and the unmistakable sound of a sandal strap flapping against cobblestone like a disgraced senator's last speech. You know that rhythm. It's the sound of a client approaching with a complaint dressed as a compliment. You brace yourself. The curtain flings open. "I trusted you," the man says dramatically, as if he's accusing you of treason rather than poor arch support. He is red in the face, sweaty, and holding one of your sandals like it's a scroll with bad news. You gesture to the stool. He doesn't sit. Of course not. Sitting would lower the drama. "I was walking, mind you, through the forum," he begins. And this, he shakes the sandal like it insulted his mother, fell apart. You take the sandal gently, you examine it. The strap is torn. The sole is ... melted slightly. You ask how far he walked. Not far, he lies. You nod slowly, glancing at the bottom of the sandal, which now resembles warm cheese that was once footwear. You recognize the damage. It's heat and pressure. Too much walking, possibly running. Possibly from something he refuses to name. It was a diplomatic engagement, he adds. You resist the urge to say diplomatic sandals shouldn't be this sweaty. Instead, you offer a measured, professional statement. This can be repaired. He huffs, as though you should be personally ashamed of his gait. You ask when he needs them. Now, you breathe in, you breathe out. You put the sandal on the bench and begin the inspection. The leather is warped, the stitching's pulled loose, not from poor technique, but from poor life choices. You carefully detach the upper, trying not to wince at the smell. It's not failure, it's feat. The man watches you, arms folded, breathing heavily. You want to ask if he's angry or just naturally wheezy? You do not. You keep sewing. As you work, he begins a monologue about his political enemies, about his aching arches, about how footwear in Gaul was superior. You nod occasionally, your fingers moving faster than your patience. The thread snaps. You sigh, you rethread. You keep going. After 15 minutes, you present the repaired sandal. He takes it, he examines it like it's evidence in a court case. He tries it on. He walks across the room. It squeaks, glares at you. You offer a weak smile. Do glue. He doesn't reply, just leaves, muttering something about Greek craftsmanship. You're not Greek, but you consider pretending to be, just to see if it improves your reviews. The door closes. You slump. Your apprentice returns with another message. Someone tripped on the stairs, he says. Wants to know if their sandals are cursed. You ask for a name? Julia, he says. The one with the small feet and large opinions? You nod. Of course, Julia insists that her fall was due to an imbalance in the stitching. Not the marble step, not the wine, the sandals. Okay, always the sandals. You agree to check them? The soles are fine. Straps are fine. Your patience is not. But you write a note, roll it up, and send it back. Blessed by Mercury himself. Walk safely. It's not true. But sometimes, a lie wrapped in poetic nonsense prevents a second visit. Later, a man stops by asking if you can make shoes for his horse. You stare at him. He insists it's for ceremonial purposes. He's a senator's horse, he says. He deserves dignity. You try to picture a horse in sandals. You fail. You agree anyway. The coin is good. That evening, your neighbor leans into the doorway. Had a client trip on your sandals, he says. They cracked a tooth. You ask if it was your fault? He shrugs. They were drunk. You shrug back, so were the sandals. He laughs. You know what you're thinking of the refund? You close the shop for the night, but not really. You just turn the lamp low and continue stitching. You've learned that the moment you rest, a sandal explodes somewhere in Rome, and someone shows up with the pieces and a complaint. You repair a strap for a soldier heading north. You reinforce the toe on a pair for a woman who insists on kicking amphory. You reshape a sole that was left in the sun and now resembles a turtle in distress. You whisper to the shoes now. It helps. Probably. By moonlight, your hands move slower. Your thoughts wander. You remember your first perderable, wobbly, and worn with pride by a cousin who lied for you. You remember the old man who taught you to cut leather in straight lines and speak to clients in crooked ones? You remember when this job felt like purpose? Now it feels like glue and grief? Still, you finish one more pair. You line them on the shelf. The left one leans. You fix it. It leans again. You give up and go to bed. Tomorrow, someone will accuse you of ruining their marriage with ill-fitting straps. You'll listen. You'll nod. You'll fix the shoes. They'll squeak anyway. It begins, as so many Roman disasters do, with an accusation, a missing amphora, and a sandal print. You aren't involved? Not at first. You're just in your shop minding your glue, wondering if leather can develop opinions when a magistrate's assistant arrives. Holding a sandal like it's a sacred relic and scowling like he has been cursed by bad theater. We need your expertise, he says. You blink. You assume he's confused or lost, or both. He insists. You come immediately. Something about a trial, evidence, and a suspicious soul. You look down at your current projectile sandals shaped like a dolphin, because someone out there thinks small feet require whimsy and sigh. You follow him. The courtroom is outdoors, because Rome prefers its justice with a side of sunburn. A crowd has already formed, buzzing with the low murmur of gossip, judgment, and the occasional fig seller yelling about discounts. At the center stands Gaius, a man you've never met. Tall, nervous, wearing only one sandal. The other lies on a stone slab, surrounded by men in togas, all squinting like it might confess. You're motioned forward, the magistrate explains. A theft occurred 2 nights ago. A storeroom was broken into. Several amphorae of good oil, patrician oil, went missing. Nothing else, just oil. No one saw the thief, but in the dirt outside, there was a footprint, sandal print. And it almost matched this sandal pulled from Gaius's foot when he stumbled in late that night, reeking of something that was either guilt or fermented olives. You ask to examine the print. They bring out a clay tablet with the impression carefully preserved. You lean in. The shape is familiar. Too familiar. You made this sandal 2 weeks ago? You remember Gaius now quiet? Polite ask for reinforced straps because he walks a lot? You remember thinking he looked like someone who wouldn't return for repairs? Hadn't expected to see him in court? You examine the print. The sole matches. The heel mark matches. Even the tiny chip on the edge from where you're all slipped that morning matches. It's your work, your flaw, your signature, in leather. You nod slowly. Well, the magistrate asks. You shrugged. He wore the shoe. The crowd gasps, slightly. But you add, that doesn't prove he wore it that night. The magistrate frowns.
Gaius perks up.
You explain. A print isn't a person. A sandal can be borrowed, lost, or stolen. You could give 10 people the same shoe and get 10 prints that looked nearly identical, especially in dirt, especially at night. They aren't thrilled by this. You add detail. Point to the depth of the heel mark, the drag along the edge, the pressure point near the toe. You suggest that the person who wore it had a limp. Gaius, for all his faults, does not limp. Now the crowd murmurs differently. The magistrate asks how you know this. You explain slowly, as if to a very powerful and very confused statue. Talk about gait pressure, how a shoemaker sees not just size, but rhythm. A footprint isn't just a mark, it's a dance. Limping, slightly tipsy dance, but still. The magistrate listens and calls for Gaius to walk. He does, straight. No drag, no wobble, no limp. A man in the crowd shouts that maybe Gaius learned to walk better since the crime. You resist the urge to throw your shoe at him. You suggest a test. Give Gaius a new sandal, fresh, untouched. Let him walk. Then compare the print. If it doesn't match the crime scene print, maybe Rome shouldn't crucify a man over an oil shortage. They agree. You craft the sandal yourself. On the spot, simple, clean, one strap, one sole. You work fast, hands moving on instinct, heart pounding like a bad drum solo. You finish in under an hour, a record even for you. Gaius wears it. Walks across a patch of prepared clay. The print is different, not dramatically, but enough. No toe drag. Different arch pressure. The limp absent. You show the prints to the magistrate. He squints. He scowls. He consults his scribe. The crowd leans in. Eventually, the magistrate sighs. Gaius is released. The crowd groans. They wanted drama. They got forensic sandalology. Gaius thanks you. Profusely. Offers to pay. You decline. You're not sure if you helped a thief escape or saved an innocent man from being turned into an oil-themed cautionary tale. Either way, it's over. You head back to your shop. Your apprentice is asleep on your bench, glue drying in his hair. You nudge him. Sits up startled, muttering something about goats. You sit down. You exhale. You pick up the dolphin sandal. You stare at it. You consider naming it Exhibit B. You first meet him on a Tuesday, which already feels like a bad omen. He arrives with a swagger that suggests confidence, wealth, and a long history of disappointing tailors. He smells like imported perfume and misplaced priorities. His tunic is embroidered, his hair oiled, and his sandals falling apart. You point this out gently. He waves you off, the hand covered in rings and poor decisions. They were made by a Greek, he says, as if that explains both. The fashion and the collapse. I want something better, something ... bold. You ask about material. Goat, he says, with the gravity of a man discussing state affairs. Only goat. Only ever goat. You pause. You try to explain that goat leather is thin, flexible, and smells faintly of its former owner, even after days of scrubbing, it wears faster than cowhide, stretches in heat, it shrinks in rain. It is by all accounts a terrible choice for a man who says he walks the hills of Aventine for cardio. He nods. Exactly. You do not understand, but the coin he places on your bench does most of the talking. You nod back. You begin. The goat leather arrives 3 days later, fresh from the tanner, and ready, exuding the faint aroma of misplaced confidence. You cut carefully. It's soft, yes, but also unpredictable, like a child who's had too much honeyed wine. The edges curl. The grain resists. You whisper a few insults. The leather, being goat, seems to absorb them with glee. You reinforce. The sole with cowhide. He doesn't need to know. You glue the layers, stitch with care, double looping every point where you know the goat will eventually rebel. You burnish the straps, polish the toe, and add a bronze clasp shaped like a lion's head, per his request. When he arrives, he squeals, genuinely high-pitched. You didn't think grown men did that? He calls them divine. Call them functional. Internally, you call them short-lived. He insists on wearing them out. He does a little spin in your doorway, but you wince. The left sandal already sighs under his weight. He leaves, beaming. 2 days later, he returns. Both sandals are warped. One is split. The lion clasp has been chewed. You don't ask how, just stare. He looks sheepish, which is ironic given the goats. He explains there was a banquet. Then, a garden party. Then a race. Then someone dared him to climb a statue. You don't respond. You just lift the sandal to your nose. It now smells of wine, failure, and rose petals. Possibly regret. It's hard to separate. He asks if you can fix them. You tell him I can try. He takes this as a yes. You begin the autopsy. The goat leather has delaminated. The strap is frayed. One sole has folded like a pessimistic scroll. You reinforce again, you patch. You add stitching. You line the interior with linen, hoping it slows the next collapse. You tell him this must be the last time. He nods solemnly. Which would be more convincing if he weren't drinking wine from a gemstone goblet while petting a lapdog in a matching. Tunic. A week passes. The sandals return this time. It's in a box. You open it carefully, like a physician examining a patient who has already declared their will. Inside is ruin. The goat leather is beyond repair. One sandal has a heel melted into a curve. The other is missing a toe strap and has somehow acquired feathers. You include a note, request denied. You send him a new pair. Cowhide reinforced. Sturdy. You dye them to resemble goat, add a bronze tag that says limited edition, and pray. He loves them. He never notices. You keep the original sandals in the back, tucked behind a jar of old nails and forgotten ambition. Sometimes you pull them out just to remind yourself what happens when you ignore your instincts in favor of shiny coins. Your apprentice calls them the cursed pair. You call them Tuesday. That week, you receive a new order from a senator's. Son, guess what he requests? Goat leather. You say no, he pouts. You still say no? He storms off muttering about Greek sandals again. You let him go. You don't work with goats anymore. Not by choice. Not unless the leather apologizes in writing. Asterisk, asterisk. It begins with a chicken. Or more precisely, the accusation that a chicken has gone missing from a senator's courtyard, and that its disappearance is somehow linked to a pair of sandals. You aren't sure how those dots connect. You aren't even sure there are dots. But Rome, bless her broken logic, thrives on drama. You're summoned again to court. Not for the chicken, for the sandals. Apparently they were found near the scene, near a feather, near some scratched stone that someone is calling evidence. You arrive reluctantly, your apron still dusted with glue flakes, your patience already tired. The court is crowded. Not because of the gravity of the case, but because there's free shade, and the fig seller is offering half-price bruised. Figs, to anyone who agrees to look stern for the defense. At the center of it all, Lucius, a young man with too much hair and not enough sense. He looks like someone who's recently told a lie and is now realizing it requires footnotes. He stands nervously beside a box. Inside, a pair of sandals. Yours. You recognize them immediately. They were a rush job. For straps, dyed green toe loops slightly misaligned due to a distracted apprentice and a pigeon-related emergency. You remember Lucius too? He asked for something light for sneaking. You assumed he meant dancing. You were wrong. The magistrate. An older man with the face of someone who has seen too many sandal-related scandals, motions for silence. We are here, he declares, to determine whether these sandals match the prints found beside the senator's stolen chicken coop. You briefly wonder how your career ended up here. You glance at the sandals. They look fine. Slightly scuffed. Feathers stuck to one sole. You raise your hand? The magistrate sighs as you explain politely that sandals don't incriminate people. People incriminate people. Sandals can only tell you where someone might have been. The mud was good, the print clear, and the chicken cooperative. The crowd titters. You continue. The prints, according to the assistant who measured them, are shallow, wide set. The left foot turns slightly inward. You note that Lucius, in person, walks like someone trying not to step on their own shadow. His left foot points out. Dramatically, you suggest a test. The crowd perks up. Rome loves tests, especially when they involve public humiliation. Lucius is handed the sandals. He puts them on. They squeak. You note that they didn't squeak when they left your shop. This either means he wore them in the rain or has unusually noisy feet, possibly both. You prepare the clay. Lucius walks. The prints are light, uneven, no inward turn. You show the magistrate. He frowns. You press further. The original prints show a limp. Lucius doesn't limp unless he's pretending. You ask him to walk again. This time his steps falter. The crowd laughs. The magistrate isn't convinced. He could be hiding it, you reply. He could also be hiding the chicken. Someone in the crowd gasps. The fig seller drops a fig. The magistrate leans forward. Are you suggesting the sandals ate the chicken? You take a long breath. You are, quite frankly, unsure what you're suggesting. You're a shoemaker, not a poultry detective. You explain calmly that the wear pattern on the sandals doesn't match the crime scene. You point to the creased strap on the right sandal. The original print showed pressure on the left foot. The sandal is stretched in the wrong direction. You suggest against that? Lucius is not the culprit. The magistrate strokes his beard. The crowd waits. Lucius sneezes. The magistrate nods. Dismissed. Lucius leaves, confused but free. The fig. Seller cheers. You gather your things. As you turn to go, a woman approaches. She holds up a sandal, broken, mangled, missing half its sole. Can you fix this? You look at it. You look at her. You nod. Of course you can, because no matter how many chickens get involved, no matter how many courts you're dragged into, no matter how many clients treat sandals like disposable ideas, you're still the one they come to when the straps break and the soles fall apart. You walk back to your workshop, sandals in hand, glue already warming in the afternoon heat, feathers still stuck to your sleeve. It's just another day in Rome, with sandals and suspicion. There's a knock at your door just after sunrise. It's polite, firm, suspiciously well-timed, like someone waited for you to finish your first bite of bread before deciding to ruin your day. You open the door. It's the magistrate, not a magistrate. The magistrate, the one from the chicken trial, the one who squinted at footprints like they were philosophical riddles, the one who once described sandals as the unsung language of the lower body. He greets you with the tone of a man who thinks everything is a conspiracy and breakfast is optional. May I come in? He asks, already stepping inside. You move aside? No. Because Rome doesn't give you the luxury of saying no to people who can confiscate your property on a whim. He doesn't sit. Instead, he circles your workshop like a philosopher lost in a sandal forest. He touches a pair on the shelf. He sniffs a spool of thread. He runs one finger along a drying sole and mutters, No. You ask if this is about a client? He says. Yes and no. You ask if someone's been murdered again. He says, hopefully not. You ask if this is about chicken footprints, he says. Not this time. He doesn't. I have a theory, he says. In the tone of someone who's been up all night drinking fig wine and reading legal scrolls upside down, a theory about prints. Not just any prints. Recurring prints. Repeated shapes. A pattern. He blinked, he leans forward. I think there's someone using identical sandals to commit petty crimes across multiple districts. I think they're planting shoes, creating confusion, building an alibi from the ground up. You stare at him. He nods, as if this is self-evident. You ask what any of this has to do with you. He opens a scroll. Inside, sketches, diagrams, clay rubbings, all of footprints. And in the corner of each sketch a faint symbol you recognize. It's yours, your old maker's mark, an almost invisible stitch pattern. It's used only in a batch you made last year for the equestrian quarter. 12 pairs. Nothing fancy. Standard soles, reinforced straps. It's built to last, but nothing special. Except, someone's been using them apparently to leave identical tracks at multiple crime scenes. Stolen scrolls. Missing wine. The senator's lost lapdog. Though to be fair, that dog runs off every week. The magistrate looks at you with the enthusiasm of a man who just discovered breadcrumbs and is now yelling about a loaf. You try to explain, your shoes are good. People pass them around. Brothers inherit them. Friends borrow them. Thieves steal them off sleeping drunks. The sandals go places you don't. He nods, then adds, but not all sandals are equal. You're not sure what that means. But he proceeds to unroll a second scroll. This one is different. Drawings of sandals. Dozens of them. All hand-dash sketched. All annotated. You realize, slowly, horrifyingly, that this magistrate collects sandal prints. Recreationally. Possibly obsessively. He calls it podal forensics. You try to nod respectfully, while mentally backing away from the part of the conversation that sounds like it belongs in a museum of strange hobbies. He continues. He tells you he's seen a pattern. Certain criminals prefer your sandals. He thinks. They're drawn to them. They leave a gentler impression, he says, and the stitch around the arch cushions the heel's impact. Perfect for disappearing quickly. I noticed it in the forum case and the oil theft. And that donkey that vanished from the granary. You point out that the donkey probably didn't wear sandals. He waves that off. Symbolism, he says. He pulls out a final scroll. A list of names. People who Honor once owned your sandals. Some names you recognize, some you'd rather not. You notice he's highlighted a name. Your own. You blink. He smiles. Relax, he says. You're not a suspect. Not yet. You do not relax. He asks you to keep your eyes open. For copies. For counterfeits. For anyone selling sandals that look too much like yours, but stitched poorly, dyed strangely, or he adds with a whisper without, soul. You ask if he means soul. He winks. You regret asking. Before he leaves, he glances once more around your workshop, selects a plain brown pair, and asks if he can buy it. You say yes. He pays in full. Gold coin. You don't ask why he chose that one. He doesn't tell you. He disappears into the street, humming to himself, scrolls under his arm. New sandals in hand. You sit alone in silence, wondering how your career has intersected with conspiracy, chickens, criminal footwear. Then you return to your bench. You begin another pair. You consider adding a new. It's maker's mark, something harder to trace, something only you would recognize. Something small, like a single stitch out of line, or a thread dyed the color of secrecy. Because in Rome, even sandals have secrets, and sometimes they walk right back to your door. Asterisk, asterisk some days. A sandal is just a sandal. Other days, it becomes a political statement. You didn't ask for this. You're sitting quietly in your shop, trying to coax a particularly moody strap into behaving wetting it, oiling it, threatening it with early retirement, when a messenger bursts in, panting, carrying a scroll in the air of someone who's been shouted at by at least 3 senators and 1 goat. He hands you the scroll. Bows too low for someone who just tracked mud across your drying recanned leaves. You open it. It's an order. Not from a client. It's from a committee. An official request to produce a public sandal. You read it twice, possibly 3 times. You're not sure it makes more sense with repetition. Apparently, there's a movement afoot. A group of reform-minded Romans young, loud, ambitious, and wearing mismatched tunics have decided that footwear is the new battlefield. They believe that sandals, if designed correctly, can express humility, unity, and resistance to tyranny. You aren't sure if they want to march or monologue? They've chosen your work specifically. A design you made 5 months ago for a clerk with flat feet and self-esteem issues. It had a wide toe, soft lining, and a strap that crossed just off-center. Because your apprentice sneezed mid-stitch, the clerk called them gentle. The movement calls them revolutionary. You stare at the scroll. You sip water. You stare again. They want 200 pairs. By the end of the month, and they want each pair to be identical stitched precisely. Dyed the same shade of earth-worn dignity, with a tiny mark in the heel, a raised circle meant to symbolize the unity of the Roman people. You wonder if any of them have walked through goat droppings in the Forum. Still, the payment is good. You accept. You immediately regret accepting. Your workshop is not built for mass production. You have 1 bench, 2 knives, an apprentice who thinks thread tangles are a form of protest, a cat who refuses to move from the spot you need most. You draft a plan. You work by lamplight. You soak leather until your fingers wrinkle. You teach the apprentice to cut straighter. Stitch tighter, breathe quieter. You dye batch after batch in large clay bowls, stirring the mix like it's soup, even though it smells like vinegar and sorrow. You test 1 pair, then 10, then 40. Your hands cramp. Your back stiffens in 2. An ancient question mark by the end of the 2nd week. Your dreams are made of soles and straps. The 3rd week brings visitors. A representative of the movement stops by. He's young, tall, and talks in slogans. These sandals, he says, holding one aloft like a holy relic, speak truth to power. You try to explain that they also squeak in wet weather. He ignores this. He praises the stitching. He sniffs. The leather? He asks if you've ever considered embedding slogans into the sole. You blink. He smiles. Imagine each step, leaving a message behind. Equality, freedom, less taxation. You resist the urge to lie down. Instead, you smile politely and offer him a free sample pair. He leaves, satisfied. Probably off to plan a rally about sandals. You return to your stitching by the end of the month. The order is complete. You line. The sandals up like soldiers, identical, symmetrical, quietly noble. You deliver them to the committee's headquarters, a rented wine shop in the Subura, now filled with pamphlets, speeches, and questionable lentils. They applaud. Someone cries, "You are thanked," hugged, paid, then forgotten. 2 weeks later, a riot breaks out near the Senate steps. You weren't there, but the story spread faster than spilled garum, apparently. A group of protesters wearing your sandals chained themselves to a statue, shouted about accountability, and then slipped on the marble. 2 senators fell. 1 broke a tooth. A donkey fainted. Your sandals are now banned in Senate buildings. A scroll arrives. It's unsigned, warning you to consider your affiliations. You frame it, because of course you do. Then the clerk returns, the one with flat feet and bad posture. He thanks you. Quietly says the sandals helped him stand straighter. Walk farther. Speak louder. He leaves a coin and a note. They made me feel taller. You read it 3 times. You don't understand all of it, but you smile. Sometimes a sandal is just a sandal. Sometimes it changes how someone walks. And sometimes that's enough. You're not usually the type to get mail. Most of your correspondence arrives in the form of shouted complaints, vague threats, or a disgruntled apprentice muttering something about how his cousin doesn't even have back pain. But today, you get a crate, a real one. Wood, nailed shut. No smell of spoiled olives or passive aggression. That alone is suspicious. Inside, A set of tools blackened, burnt, beautiful. There's a note. You read it 3 times before the meaning really lands. Probably because it contains words like archaeological and preservation context. You skip to the important part. Recovered from the shoemaker's shop in Herculaneum. Ash layer sealed the room. Tools intact, possibly yours to study. You blink. You were expecting maybe a leather shipment? Maybe a returned sandal with toe? Complaints not. Ancient relics of a dead man's trade gift-wrapped in volcanic trauma. You reach into the crate and touch history. Or at least something that smells. It's like it hasn't had a bath since Vesuvius exploded. First, the awl. A little bent. Charred along the shaft. The tip is still sharp. Sharper than your apprentice's wit, which is not hard. You poke it lightly into your thumb just enough to confirm it could still ruin your afternoon. It could next a bone needle. So old it's turned the same shade as disappointment. You hold it to the light. You can see the groove worn by thread tugged through the same tiny hole again and again, possibly while someone outside screamed about falling rocks. There's a hammer. Too small, flat, and absolutely the kind of thing that looks useless. Until you realize it's responsible for every sandal that ever sat. It's flat and didn't squeak, and a last wooden narrow-footed, worn in one spot more than the others. You trace it gently and think, he had a favorite size. In terrible posture, you imagine his shop. You can't help it. It's small, dark, smells like glue, leather, and fear of taxes. He's hunched over his bench, same as you, not out of humility. Just sciatica. He's halfway through a sandal. Not a masterpiece. Just something for a merchant's third wife. The one with the wide toes and the long list of demands. He's not happy, but he's working then. A sound, maybe thunder, maybe the world ending. Same difference. He doesn't stop stitching, not at first. It's just a noise. Could be a cart, could be an argument, it could be the upstairs neighbor's amphora collection. Collapsing again. Not your problem. But then the light changes. The air gets heavier. And then ash, just ash dot fast, hot. Final, the tools stay. Everything else gone. You look at them now, spread across your bench like a murder mystery with excellent handcraft. Your apprentice wanders in and asks, "Are those new?" You say, "They're older than your ancestors." He pokes the awl. "Can I have one?" You say, "Only if you survive a volcano first." He shrugs. Seems fair? You spend the next hour cleaning them, as gently as possible. You try not to imagine how many other hands touch these lascurators, scholars, possibly a senator who wanted to see if they still smelled like history. They do. They smell like burnt glue, regret, and ancient foot fungus. You place them in a line, one by one. Each one says something. The knife curves left, worn down on one side. That means the shoemaker was right-handed and slightly impatient. All is blunted from punching through thick leather, possibly armor. Possibly just an order from someone who thought shoes and shields were interchangeable. The last has been repaired twice. Pegs inserted where the wood split. You nod? You've done the same, because wood doesn't give up. Just creaks until you do. You decide to try one of the tools. Just once you pick up the awl, you pierce. A fresh piece of leather. It slides through, effortless. You can feel the years in the grip. You can feel the ghost of someone else's wrist. Angling just so, you tell yourself this is about honoring a tradition. Really, you just want to know if he was better than you. He probably was. You stitch a small sandal, just one. Not to sell, not to wear. Just to see if your hands can match the pace of someone buried for 2,000 years. You try to replicate his method from the traces, a forward stitch, angled tight, with an upward tug near the heel seam. It's awkward at first, then oddly familiar. It's like borrowing someone else's handwriting. Finding your name fits better in it. The sandal turns out crooked, perfectly so. You don't fix it. You don't trim the edge, or even burn the loose thread. You hang it above the door. Your apprentice asks why. You say, because it didn't get finished either. He doesn't get it. You don't explain. Later that night, after the shop is closed and the glue pot is cooled, you light a lamp and sit Your bench again. The tools sit beside you. It's quiet but not still. You don't believe in omens, but there's something about a set of tools surviving the end of the world. Not a sword, not a scroll, not a crown. Just a needle, not an owl, and a job left half done. Asterisk the first time you try to copy one of the ancient sandals, it falls apart halfway through. Not dramatically, not like a moral failing. Just slowly, like it realizes what century it's in and gives up. You try again. This time, you wet the leather longer, soak it in a vinegar solution like the scholars recommend, then regret it instantly. It smells like sour disappointment and damp socks left on a temple floor.
Yeah.
You wrinkle your nose and mutter something impolite in the general direction of Pompeii. The pattern you're copying is incomplete.
Actually,
No one thought to survive the eruption while holding detailed diagrams. So instead, you have a few fragments, some guesses, and a drawing done by a man who thinks every sandal should resemble a snail. But you persist. Because persistence is what? You do. No one becomes a shoemaker for the thrill. You do it for the rhythm, for the glue under your fingernails, for the way a stitch line holds tight even when everything else starts to fray, including your patience. You lay out the pieces. On your bench, a slightly curved sole traced from the surviving last, a set of thongs cut thin and sharp, and an upper flap meant to cover exactly nothing but look like it might if you squint. The leather curls as it dries, mocking your attempts at neatness. The straps tangle, the glue bubbles, your apprentice suggests, making modern adjustments. You throw a sandal at him. He dodges smugly, then resumes winding thread into knots that no living god could untangle. By midday, you've recreated something. You're not sure if it's accurate, but it's definitely honest. The sole tilts slightly. The thong strap pulls left, squeaks when you flex it. It's not a loud squeak. More like a shoe politely warning you it has a secret. You hold it up to the light. It looks like a mistake made with love. You call that success. The third pair goes better. You've learned that ancient Roman feet were narrower than today's possibly, because they spent their childhood walking on gravel and shame. You adjust the last accordingly, filing it down with the same rasp you once used to fix a senator's bunion-shaped emergency. You line the straps with linen. Shoemaker did. Not because it's necessary, because it makes you feel like you're listening to someone you'll never meet. You wonder if he knew someone might do this one day. It's probably not. Shoemakers don't plan for legacy. They plan for rain, rude clients, and unexpected goat invasions. Still, something about this feels like dialogue. You make notes. Adjust the angle of the toe loop. Shorten the heel flap. You wonder if the missing stitch marks were the result of rushing or habit. You copy the asymmetry, resisting every urge to fix it, because maybe it wasn't broken, because maybe it was just human. The museum sends you a request. Could you replicate a full set for display? You hesitate. You've already made 6, each one slightly different. Each one a guess wrapped in leather, but now they want 20 for a replica exhibit, and they want them perfect, which is, of course, it's impossible, but you say yes. You regret it immediately because now the historian shows up. He arrives at your door. With a scroll under one arm, sandals that clearly never met real roads, and the confidence of a man who's never stitched anything in his life but once gave a public talk about footwear philosophy. He says words like curatorial integrity and textile pluralism and authenticity. He looks at your samples and says they're emotionally correct but materially divergent. You nod. Then make him hold a glue pot for the next. 3 hours, he sweats, he apologizes, balance is restored by the time you're halfway through the commission. Your fingers are raw. The back of your neck aches. You've burned your thumb on the wax pot. Twice, you start naming each sandal after something you've lost this week. Patience, precision, feeling in my right knee. But you finish them. 20 sandals. Not matched. Not clean, just real. You deliver them in a linen sack that once held barley. You think the shoemaker from Herculaneum would have approved? The museum curator calls them imperfectly faithful. You take it as a compliment. That night, you make one more pair. for yourself. You don't sell it. You don't display it. You just wear it to see what it feels like to walk in someone else's centuries. The left sandal creaks. The right one rubs. Slightly against your heel, you smile. You don't fix it, because not everything broken needs correcting. Sometimes, it just needs remembering. You don't expect to be remembered. You know how it goes. Sandals wear out, clients move on, streets swallow footprints, and your name fades faster than a chalk mark in summer rain. That's fine. It's the arrangement. But sometimes, rarely, you get a reminder that even the small work lingers. Quietly, stubbornly, like glue in your fingernails. 3 days after the job is done, it begins with a scholar again. You're getting used to them now, these enthusiastic scribblers with their sunburns, scrolls, and slightly haunted expressions. This one looks more winded than most. His shoes are bad. Factory stitched, aptly imported. Probably Greek. They squeak with every step. Like gilt in sandal form, he has a wax tablet. He unrolls a note. You read it once, then again, it's a list. An inventory. Items recovered from a shop in Herculaneum, one wooden last size, uncertain 1 pair. Of child sandals, unfinished one, all bent 2 pairs of soles stitched. Separated a handful of nails, a bench chart, a wall etching, name unclear, and a clay plaque. He unwraps it. You hold it. It's simple. Flat, cracked at the corner. Letters scratched in, haphazard and shallow, like someone didn't have time to make them deep. You read aloud, service visit, eyes. All no flourish, no date, no grand claim of legacy, just a name with no name. You run your fingers over the grooves. You think about the shoemaker, not the master, the servant, the apprentice, the boy whose job was to sweep the floor, oil the tools, get blamed for everything that went wrong. You have one of those too. He's in the back. Right now, trying to fix a sandal that a dog chewed into the shape of regret. He's humming, off-key. Loudly, you stare at the plaque. There are no emperors here, no philosophers, no generals. Just a worker who decided on the edge of eruption, maybe hours before the sky became fire, to carve a sentence into clay.
As if to say I was here.
And I made something. You put it down. You wipe your hands. Then you tell your apprentice to come here. He looks nervous, because he always assumes he's done something wrong. Statistically, he has. But this time, you just point to the plaque. Read it, you say. He does. Slowly. His Latin's a bit shaky. He squints. The servant made this, he translates, then adds, was it a warning? You don't answer. You hand him your own all. The old one, the good one. Worn smooth from years of stubbornness, he blinks for me. You nod. Eventually, he holds it like it might bite him. Am I ready? You shrugged. No, but you're never ready. You just stop ruining everything. He looks proud. You instantly regret saying anything sentimental. Balance is restored. Later that evening, when the sun is dropped behind the tiled roofs and the street smells faintly of fish sauce and resignation, you go back to your bench. You sit. You stare at your tools. You think about what's left behind. It's not the sandals. Those fall apart. Even the best ones only last a few seasons before the cobbles chew them up. It's not the tools. They outlive you, but only if the ground swallows them at just the right time. It's not the shop. I can be ash tomorrow. It's the mark, the crooked stitch, the way the toe curves, too far in, the spot where your thread always slips on the third loop because your hands shake more than they used to. It's the moment someone walks a little easier because of what you made, Evan. If they don't know who you are, even if they never think of you again, it's a clay plaque that no one was meant to find. Left by someone who never got thanked, you stare at the sandals drying on your rack, you pick up a nail, and quietly, without ceremony, scratch your name. Just initials, really into the underside of the last pair you finished. The part no one sees. The part that wears against the dirt. You smile. You put it back. The apprentice peeks in. Are we done for the day? You nod. He grins, then asks, Do I get to sign something too? You shake your head? You have to ruin fewer sandals first. He groans. You light a lamp. You stay seated a little longer. Tomorrow, someone will bring in a sandal torn from a chariot. Wheel and swear it was your fault the wheel turned left. Tomorrow. You'll fix it. But tonight, for a few quiet moments. You remember someone else who sat here, just like you? Hands sore, back aching. Heart full of thread and ash, and something that maybe might last. Asterisk, there's a knock at the door always. With the knock, never a gentle hello or a polite announcement. Just a firm, confident knock, the kind that says, I've misunderstood something deeply. I'm here to explain it to you. You open the door, of course. It's a scholar. This one's tall, wide-eyed, and wearing a toga with more folds than confidence. He steps inside like he's entering a sacred temple, which is unfortunate, because your shop smells like boiled glue and someone's forgotten lunch. He doesn't seem to notice. I've been studying your sandals, he announces. You blink. Slowly. He clarifies, the Herculaneum replicas. Ah, of course. You gesture to the bench. He doesn't sit. You never sit. Scholars hover. It's like anxious ghosts holding half a thesis and a full misunderstanding. He pulls out a scroll, unrolls it dramatically. Have you seen this? Yes, you. Squint. It's a sketch. One of your sandals. From the museum collection. It's annotated badly. This is the prototype, he says, pointing. A ceremonial sandal, perhaps. It's likely worn by a priest during sacred rites involving grain. You pause. Grain? You ask. He nods. You can see Hertha upward curve in the toe. That was likely for stability on threshing floors. You stare at the sketch. You know the curve. It was a mistake, a warped sole. You didn't correct because the leather was drying too fast and your apprentice was crying about bees. You nod anyway. He continues. And this small strap? Decorative, purely symbolic. Perhaps an allusion to Saturn's scythe. It was a leftover scrap. You ran out of matching leather. You'd hoped no one would notice. He notices everything, except what matters. The stitching, he says, is irregular, almost emotional. You nearly choke, you remember that day. Clearly, you'd spilled glue, burned your wrist, and sliced your thumb trying to fix a sandal ordered by a client with feet shaped like a flattened amphora. The emotional stitching was you swearing under your breath and finishing the job with your non-dominant hand. He takes a deep breath. Tell me, he says, leaning closer, was the original maker a philosopher? You reply, yes. Beams then adds, I thought so. You offer him a cup of water to stop him talking. He declines, distracted now by your tools. He picks up a hammer. This, he says reverently, is not a tool. It is a symbol. You nod again. It's also the hammer you use to flatten uppity sandals and occasionally drive nails into your workbench when you've had a long week. He makes more notes. He sketches your awl. He measures your glue pot. He stares at your drying rack like it holds divine truths. One sandal falls to the floor. He gasps. You keep them elevated? You don't explain that you do it to stop the cat from chewing the straps. He pulls out a final scroll. His theoria, you skim it. He's wrong about nearly everything. He's dated your replica 3 centuries too. He's identified your apprentice's accident as intentional asymmetry. He's declared the goat leather a metaphor. He's footnoted a shoe you want to scream, instead. You smile. You offer him a small leather sample, something soft, nothing important. He holds it like scripture. I shall include this in my next paper, he says. You say, please do. He leaves triumphant. The moment the door closes, your apprentice bursts out laughing. He thought the warped pear was for ceremonies. You nod. He said the toe curve was for grain. You nod again, the apprentice wipes tears from his face. You return to your bench. Because this is what happens. The people who wear your sandals never think twice. The people who study them, centuries later, assign them meaning, emotion, structure, and occasionally, religious significance. You've made shoes for men trying to seduce senators and for women trying to escape arranged marriages. You've made shoes that broke in the rain, shoes that never fit, shoes that got left in aqueducts, and shoes you wish you hadn't made at all. But now apparently you are a philosopher. Your stitching is emotive, your flaws are deliberate. Commentary, and your poor thread tension? Subversive? Your apprentice asks if you're going to correct the scholar. You shake your head. You don't correct someone who calls your mistake a masterpiece. He considers this, then nods solemnly. Maybe. I should start messing up on purpose, he offers. You glance at his current project. You already are. That evening, as you clean your bench and gather your tools, you find a sandal you'd forgotten about, one you made months ago, slightly lopsided, dyed a strange purple that never quite caught on. You turn it over. You scratch a small new mark. Into the heel. Nothing fancy. Just a tiny crescent. You don't know what it means yet, but someday, maybe someone will. You don't get applause. No one throws laurel wreaths at your feet when you finish a sandal. No statues are erected in your honor. You don't get poetry or parade or even a thank you that isn't mumbled over a coin tossed too casually. Onto your bench, and yet you work. Not because you love it. You don't. You tolerate it. You endure it. You bend over your tools every day because sandals don't stitch themselves and the gods aren't hiring. You wake up early. The light isn't golden. It's gray. The glue is stiff. The cat has been sick on your awl again. Apprentice is late and smells like fermented. Cabbage.you start cutting anyway, because it has to be done. There's a sandal for a baker who walks 12 miles a day delivering crusts to clients with opinions. He wants something that doesn't collapse when he stomps. There's a pair for a widow who walks to the baths alone and doesn't want her feet to remind her of the man who left behind shoes 2 sizes too large and half a marriage worth of silence. There's a boy who needs shoes that will grow with him. They won't. You'll see him again in 6 months. You shape, trim, stitch. You curse. You unpick. You try again. You wonder sometimes if anyone notices. You know the answer. No one does. Shoes are noticed only when they fail, only when they rub, or break, or betray you on the steps of a temple in front of someone impressive. Success is invisible. Only discomfort gets remembered. But still, you stitch, because it has to be done. You don't know who walked in those sandals recovered from. Herculaneum. You don't know if they were good at their craft, if their client smiled, if their apprentice ever got better. You just know the tools lasted. The work lasted, and now yours might too. A man came by yesterday. He was quiet, didn't say much. Wore robes that had seen better politics. Sandals yours were 4 years old. You could tell by the seam near the toe. A tiny wobble you remember regretting. He hadn't replaced them, just restitched the strap. Patched the heel with something homemade. They were ugly and alive. You complimented him. He nodded, still walking. That was all. It was enough. You sit at your bench and consider the day. A sandal waits to be completed. A strap needs reinforcing. There's a pile of soles drying in the window, and a cat sleeping on the one pair you needed to deliver. Tomorrow, you don't move him. He's earned the nap. Your apprentice enters. He says he's ready. You ask, for what? He shrugs. Whatever comes next. He's not. But maybe he's close. You let him finish a pair. He does it slowly. Carefully, he messes up one stitch, then fixes it. You pretend not to see the first mistake. He pretends not to see you pretending. This is how craft is passed on, not with instruction, but with repetition, time, with small, quiet failures that become less noticeable over years. He sets the sandals on the bench, beside yours. They aren't perfect, but they're real. You ask if he wants to sign them. He nods. He carves a tiny mark into the leather, something personal. You don't ask what it means. You carve yours. To side by side, not for legacy, not for praise, just so the work has a name. Later that night, you light the lamp and sit alone. You listen to the quiet, the creak of the stool, the faint crackle of the cooling glue, the soft shifting of sandals in the dark. You think about the other shoemaker long gone. It's buried under ash, tools frozen mid-thought. No monument, no name. Just work, and still. Here he is, alive in every stitch you copied, every strap you fumbled, every scholar who got it all wrong, and still said your work looked sacred. You look at your bench, at your knife, at your AWL, at your apprentice's crooked sandal that squeaks when you touch it, and you smile, because this is the glory. Not fame, not fortune, not fanfare, but the quiet glory of ordinary work, of showing up, of finishing what someone else began, of leaving something behind that carries someone else forward. Even if they never know your name, you blow out the lamp and leave. The sandals to rest. Asterisk, asterisk, you shouldn't be here. You're a shoemaker, not a senator. And yet, you're walking through the wide atrium of a domus, one of those oversized Roman homes that seems to exist solely to remind people that they don't live in a dom. U.S., the marble beneath your feet is cold. White veined like a tired eye. The walls are painted with delicate scenes of gods who never had to haggle over leather prices. A fountain trickles nearby, shaped like a dolphin vomiting water into a bowl. You've been summoned, not invited. Summoned because Lady Aurelia has opinions about sandals. And yours are the latest victim. You walk carefully, trying not to leave. Footprints, but it's raining outside and your soles are damp. Each step leaves a faint shadow on the pristine floor. Curse softly and try to step where the mosaics are already chipped. A servant leads you down a corridor that smells like perfume, roses, and political ambition. Curtains flutter. Somewhere nearby, a lyre is being plucked with all the emotional subtlety of a nervous chicken. And then the voice. Aha, the shoemaker. Lady Aurelia is reclining on a couch made of cedar and consequence. Her sandals are. Sandals are dangling from one hand. Her expression suggests she's been wronged by the entire universe and is starting with you. She gestures to the sandals, these pinched. She says, here, right at the sole, you consider correcting. Her, then decide against it. You take the sandals gently. They're flawless. Perfect stitching, polished straps. The leather is soft, supple, almost noble. You hold them like offerings, you say. Would you like me to adjust them? She waves a dismissive hand. No, I want new ones, you nod. Of course, the servant brings out a tray of other sandals. Yours, all once praised. All now rejected. One pair still has your mark burned into the hela, small crescent hidden beneath the strap. She points to it. This one squeaked in the Senate Hall. You say acoustics can amplify. She says, I was humiliated. You do not say by the sandal or the legislation. You take the tray. You listen. She describes what she wants. Something elegant, soft, silent, yet commanding. She wants to glide. She wants to intimidate. She wants to be remembered, but not by her shoes. She wants sandals that do everything and say nothing. You ask what color? She says the shade of unspoken power. You write down beige? Back in your workshop, you try to make sense of the request. You look at the rejected sandals each. One a minor miracle of craftsmanship and patience and wonder what changed. Maybe her feet grew. Maybe her tolerance shrank. Maybe someone else wore nicer sandals and now she's on a campaign to never be outstrapped again. You cut new leather, thinner, softer. You dye it with wine and crushed berries, because someone once told you it gave the sandals a hint of political seriousness. You add lining. You smooth the edges. You soften the sole until it feels like walking on regret wrapped in silk. You test them yourself. You walk the length. Out of your shop, they squeak. You walk slower. They still squeak. You look at the ceiling and whisper why. You adjust the arch. You glue the heel. Curse at the cat for good measure. You walk again. Silence. You exhale. The next day you return to the dom. Same marble floor, same paintings, same faint panic of tracking in dirt. You wait in the vestibulum. You're ignored, eventually. Someone appears to accept the sandals. A servant, bored, chewing something that smells like fennel and regret. He says nothing, just nods, then closes the door. That's it. No thanks. No coin. Just the possibility of approval. You walk home in the rain, wondering if you'll be paid, or summoned again, or merely remembered as the one who made the sandals that nearly squeaked. A week later, a different servant appears. He has a letter. It's short, acceptable. Do not change formula. Order 6 more pairs. You stare at it. Then at the sandals she rejected. You wonder if you should sell them to someone less dramatic. Or maybe keep them as a reminder that silence is golden, especially when it doesn't squeak. You add a note to your order records. Domus sandals. Blend of power and paranoia. Recommend padding. Then you get back to work. Because senators fall. Patrons. Change. And feet always walk. They call you after dark, not by mistake. Not as an emergency. Because apparently. Moonlight is the correct lighting for judging sandal aesthetics. Something about shadows, its ankle curves, and the divine alignment of taste and wealth. You arrive. At the Domus again. This time, the torches are already lit. The air smells like olives, incense, and someone's nervous attempt at herbal confidence. A servant greets you without eye contact, then gestures you in with the wordless authority of someone who manages chaos without ever looking directly at it. You're escorted through a side garden filled with strategically placed urns and birds that look decorative, but judge you silently. And then Lady Aurelia. Again, she stands in the middle of a moonlit courtyard, flanked by 3 other women and one unfortunate poet who appears to be there for comparison. The sandals are laid out. In a neat line on a carpet that definitely wasn't meant for shoes. You wince internally. She turns. Good, she says, without looking at you. We need your opinion. You were not expecting that. You nod cautiously. She points to the sandals. Each pair says influence without vulgarity. You stare. They're identical. Same. Shape. Same strap. Same delicate curve along the arch that took you 3 attempts in a personal crisis to perfect. You say this one? And point at the middle pair, purely at random. She nods. Yes, that one. The other women murmur. The poet writes something down, possibly a death wish. Lady Aurelia steps into the pair. The poet claps. Someone brings out a mirror to large. Too polished. It's too heavy to move without servants trained in awkward lifting. She poses. She turns left. She turns right. She squints. She steps out. These are good, she says, but I think I need something more seasonal. You ask what season? She means, she says, ambition. You nod. Again, this is your life now. She gestures to the others. Each woman steps forward, selects a pair, models it in silence, like a foot-focused oracle, then frowns meaningfully. One sighs, one raises an eyebrow. One just pokes the toe and mutters, too decisive. You are somehow being judged alongside your work. You ask, would you like alterations? One of them turns to you and says, do you have something that evokes secrecy but also mild seduction? You blink, another leans in, and something that could suggest loyalty, but only to the right cause. You start mentally relabeling your designs. You go home that night and write down a new sandal classification system. Glides toward danger but responsibly regret, but with good posture. Looks poor. Smells expensive. No comment. Just presence. You try to build sandals for emotions now, for statements, for political aspirations, whispered alliances, and that specific kind of disdain only the very wealthy can afford to perform with their ankles. Your apprentice reads your notes, he asks. Are these real requests? You say worse, they're metaphors. He doesn't understand. You envy him. The next week, they summon you again. This time, the request is very specific. Sandals for a moonlight dinner with rivals who must not know. They are rivals. You pause. You ask about terrain. Mostly gravel, they say, and judgment. Make them from soft cowhide, reinforced at the heel, silent at the toe. You line the straps with thin wool for comfort. You dye them a muted gold, because bronze would be too honest. When you deliver them, one of the women calls them elegantly non-committal. You take it as a compliment. Later, you overhear a servant whispering that Lady Aurelia keeps a room just for shoes, not for wearing, just for thinking about them. You don't know whether to be flattered or afraid. The poet, still lurking, tries to strike up conversation. He asks, have you ever considered writing odes to your work? You say only when they fall apart. He nods, scribbles something, and mutters about tragic leather. You return to your shop. You try to forget that someone used the phrase season of betrayal to describe a color palette. You try to forget that a sandal is now expected to embody emotional restraint. You fail, but you keep stitching. Because fashion is fickle, and feet are forever. And no matter how ridiculous the request, make me a sandal that doesn't look like it's trying too hard, you will try. Because you're the shoemaker. Because the moonlight doesn't care, but the patrons always do. Asterisk. The invitation didn't mention dinner. It just said presents requested, which is Roman for prepare for confusion, false smiles, and olives served with tension. You arrive at the Domus for the third time this month. The servant doesn't even flinch now. He just grunts and waves you in like you're another unpleasant relative who won't stop showing up with sandals and opinions. You're led to a dining room this time. Long couches, low tables. Everything smells faintly of honeyed wine and unresolved conflict. They're mid-banquet. You spot the usual suspects. Lady Aurelia reclining at the center, armed with sarcasm and a fig. Two minor senators who dress like they're important, visiting general who looks like he's never trusted a pillow. And him goes. He's not from around here. You can tell by the way he speaks slowly, loudly, and with the faint threat of knowing someone who owns a vineyard. His tunic is new. His hair is oiled to perfection. His smile is just slightly too white, to be sincere, and he's wearing your sandals. You recognize the design instantly. Open-laced, wide toe, extra strap for stability. You made that pair for a merchant's cousin, with one leg slightly longer than the other. A difficult commission, built for dinner parties. He catches you staring and grins. Then, for reasons still unclear to history, he kicks off the sandals. Just off, in the middle of a sentence, they arc slightly. One lands under the table, the other bounces. Hits a wine jug. Wine topples it. Red wine across white mosaic. Everyone freezes. Aurelia raises. An eyebrow sharp enough to kill a centurion. Gaius laughs. Oops, he says. In the tone of someone who's never truly apologized for anything, a senator clears his throat. Someone mutters, "Those were imported sandals." You resist the urge to shout they were not. They were local. Yes, they were mine. Instead, you kneel quietly and retrieve the runaway sandal. It's scuffed now, bent slightly, covered in pomegranate pulp. You sigh. As does the sandal. Probably Aurelia. Says, in Etruscan tradition, kicking off one's sandal meant you were invoking truth. Gaius, clearly emboldened, smirks. Then let truth begin. And that's how it starts. The conversation turns fast. Fast truth apparently involves opinions about land taxes. Army reforms someone's suspicious new bathhouse and weather-wearing. Gold-threaded tunics is morally decadent or just fashion-forward. You sit quietly in the corner, sandals in lap, watching what unfolds. It's less a dinner party now, or a structured shouting match with snacks. At one point, Gaius accuses the poet of sedition. The poet retaliates by quoting the wrong Greek philosopher. With extreme confidence, Lady Aurelia sips wine like it's theater. You try to fix the strap. You try not to laugh. A servant crouches beside you. He whispers, "Is it always like this?" You whisper back only when the sandals fit too well. A lust, the sandal you're holding still smells. Faintly of roasted lamb and ambition. Eventually, voices rise too high. Someone stands at the general, mutters about honor and improper footwear. Gaius declares loudly, "I would rather be barefoot than complicit." You close your eyes and count to 10, then 20, then back to 10, because even your counting is starting to feel. Political, the gathering dissolves soon after. The senators leave in a huff. The poet flees under cover of verse. The general stomps away, sandals squeaking in a rhythm that suggests military disapproval. Gaius doesn't collect his shoes. He walks out barefoot, lady. Aurelia turns to you. She gestures to the abandoned sandals. "Burn them," she says, "or give them to someone less theatrical." You nod. Later, back at your workshop, You clean the sandals anyway? They're damaged. Yes. But structurally sound. You straighten the strap, rinse off the wine, restitch the heel. You try them on, they fit annoyingly well. Your apprentice enters and sees you wearing them. He squints. Aren't those cursed? They're comfortable. He nods. Most trouble is, you hang them near the window to dry. You write in your records. Pair number 147, incited verbal conflict. Mild political fallout, no structural failure, it's good stitch integrity. Then you brew some tea. Because after all the yelling and the wine and the pomegranate bits in places they shouldn't be, all that remains is you. And the sandals, still here, still walking. You don't believe in symbols, not the big ones. Not the kind carved on statues or sewn into military standards and waved around like they mean something beyond. I'm in charge, and here's a bird. You believe in souls, in straps, in the way. A sandal bends with someone's gait, in the smudge of dirt, where someone always lands heavier on their left foot. You believe in the pattern of wear, the quiet confessions of leather, and lately so do the rich. They don't say it out loud. Of course, that would be gauche, but they're watching. Started asking questions like, what does this sole say about me? Or is a double strap too forward? You tried saying, it says your heel needs support. That wasn't the right answer. So now, apparently, you're a cobbler and a philosopher. You return to the Domus one morning, invited this time, with actual courtesy and a fruit basket that has clearly been sniffed by 3 different cats along. The way Lady Aurelia greets you in a different tone today. Less performance, more curiosity. She holds a sandal in one hand and a scroll in the other. She says, tell me what this means. You think she means the sandal? You are wrong. She unrolls the scroll. It's a rubbing of a footprint from a villa outside the city. Old, preserved, pressed into a layer of hardened clay. A child's by the size, but unmistakably wearing sandals. Design.or, more precisely, the Herculaneum replicas. The ones that have become fashionable among those who think memory is the same thing as nostalgia. You blink. She explains, this footprint was found near a fresco of Mercury, the messenger god. The scholars think it's a symbol, metaphor, perhaps a ritual, perhaps a tribute, perhaps poetry in leather. You nod, then say, or a child walked through wet clay and no one cleaned up. She stares at you for a long moment, then, to your surprise, she laughs. A real one. Not the polite kind. That sounds like a dying liar, she says. Fine. Be difficult. You smile. Just a little. She gestures to the table. 10 pairs of sandals. All different. All labeled with scroll tags like elegance, patience, irony, and somehow civic regret. You pick one up, it's soft. Narrow, meant to flatter the foot's shape rather than support it. You press the sole. Too thin. Meant for showing off, not walking, you say. This one means you're not planning to stand long. She nods, writes that down. Another pair has thick straps, high ankle wraps, and soles that could outlast a siege. You say, this one means you expect betrayal, but still want to look fashionable when it happens. She beams. The game begins. You describe each pair not by construction, but by implication. This says you're rich, but pretend not to be. This one suggests you read political speeches while bathing. This pair says I lost money in a vineyard scandal, but learned nothing. The poet arrives halfway through and starts writing down your commentary. You make eye contact with him long enough to communicate one clear message. Stop that. He stops. Mostly by noon. You become a kind of sandal oracle. They bring out more. Some are new. Some are yours. Return for reinterpretation. 1 para. Simple brown design had been gifted to a senator's wife 2 years ago. She wants to know what they mean now. You sniff them. You check the wear pattern. You say they mean you took a lot of short walks in gardens, then changed your mind. She looks horrified. You try to soften the blow. It also says you avoid confrontation. Shh, sighs deeply. Another woman asks. If her sandals make her seem too ambitious, you ask in sandals or in general? She doesn't answer. The rest of the day passes in metaphor and soul analysis. You go home exhausted, somehow more tired than if you'd stitched every pair by hand. with thread made from your own regrets. Your apprentice asks how it went. You say, "We've passed from function into theater." He asks if you're going to start naming each sandal design. You already have. The whisper of confidence, the heel of disappointment, strap of hidden opinions, sole of strategic. Withdrawal you, look at the newest pair on your bench. Simple. Clean. Nothing fancy, you call it just enough. Because sometimes, that's all someone wants. To be, you realize eventually, the sandals are no longer just for walking. They're for saying something, even if that something is, "Look at me," but not too hard. Even if it's, "I can afford better, but I chose this." Even if it's, "I don't want to be here, but I will look excellent while I suffer." You don't believe in symbols, but you understand them now, because a soul can lie. But the wear, pattern doesn't, and straps always tell the truth. Asterisk, you didn't know it would be the last one. It starts like any other order urgent. Vague and soaked in implied status. A courier arrives before sunrise, tapping the door like your sleep schedule is an insult to the Republic. He says Lady Aurelia requests a fitting immediately for travel. She's leaving Rome, heading south for the air, the note says, which is how the rich say I've made too. Many enemies and need a villa with fewer eyes. You grab your tools and your best selection of soles. You don't ask questions. You wrap each piece in cloth, pack everything into your travel satchel, and head to the Domus, trying not to look like someone hoping for closure. It's quieter than usual when you arrive. No lyre music, no poet leaning against a column with tragic intent, just a servant waiting in the atrium. Hands clasped tightly as if trying to contain the gossip through sheer force of will. You're led to her chamber another first. Normally, fittings happen in courtyards, gardens, or anywhere with at least 3 witnesses and a decorative bowl of grapes. The room is spacious, dim. A single lamp flickers near the bed. Aurelia is seated at a low couch, foot resting on a cushion. Embroidered with birds that never existed. She looks tired, not ruined, not undone, just slightly faded, like paint on a public statue left in the sun too long. She says nothing at first, just gestures to her feet. You kneel. You begin the fitting. Her old sandals lie near boy-worn, cracked, one strap patched in a way that isn't yours. She sees you glance at them and shrugs. I tried another shoemaker, she says. It briefly. It didn't take. You nod gently. You measure her arch, her toes. You trace the shape of her foot onto a flat piece of parchment, same as always, but something's different, not her feet. The silence. There's always been noise here, opinions. Comparisons. Someone requesting that their sandals match the emotional palette of political uncertainty. Today, there's only the sound of her breathing. Is your pen? You ask softly, leather or linen lining? She answers, whatever's quieter. You don't laugh. But your hands pause, just briefly, over the tools. She adds, they say. Things are changing. You don't ask who they are. You already know. The people who watch shadows before the statues fall. The ones who buy sandals they'll never wear, because the roads may not be safe much longer. She leans back. She says, do you know what I remember most? You shake your head. She smiles, just faintly. The first pair you made for me, the ones that pinched, I wore them to a dinner where I was outmaneuvered in every conversation. I could barely walk by the end. But everyone thought it was a stylistic choice, you say? It worked. She nods. I kept them, she says. Still, do you finish the tracing? You place the parchment gently beside your satchel. You reach for the straps, the polished buckles. The sole's pre-cut and waiting. For form, she stops you. Wait. You pause. She leans forward, picks up one of the old sandals, and turns it over. I used to hate this mark, she says, pointing to your maker's stamp. Hidden, always discreet. Why? Because it reminded me someone else made. That it wasn't entirely mine. You nod, unsure where this is going. She continues, but now, I think I like it, because it means someone else will remember. You don't know what to say, so you keep working. The fitting finishes, she chooses. The softest leather, muted tone, dusty plum, like a bruised idea. She doesn't ask for embellishment, no gilding. No thread of silver or token of favor. just sandals that fit. And last, you adjust the final strap. She tests the sole, steps gently onto the stone floor. No squeak, no echo, just the soft rhythm of someone leaving carefully. She nods. It's good. You pack your tools. You say nothing more. You aren't sure what words would even make sense anymore at the door. She stops you. Leave your mark deeper this time, she says. Inside the strap, where it can't wear off. You hesitate, then nod. You scratch the mark a little deeper, just beneath the first loop. It catches the light as you finish. Not bright, not bold, just certain. Then you leave. And the next day, her house is shuttered. Gone. Vanished like a rumor that grew tired. People say she left for the coast, or for Greece, or for a place where sandals matter less than silence. You don't know. But some mornings, as you pass through the forum, you imagine hearing the soft, sure tap of soles made to outlast politics, and you wonder, maybe someone will find those sandals centuries from now, maybe in a layer of ash or dust, or behind a fresco painted with lies. Maybe they'll see your mark and not know your name, but they'll know the work, and that somehow will be enough. Asterisk. And now the sandals rest. The tools are quiet. The soles are cooling on the rack, and the glue's faint sweetness still lingers in the air. You've stitched your share of stories, some walked into war, some into silence, some into a garden, where the path curved just slightly left. There's no statue, no echoing name, but your mark is there, pressed beneath the strap, soft and certain. Thank you for walking all this way with me through ash and marble, through politics and pomegranate spills. If your eyes are still open, you've earned a little peace. And now, as you lie there, you know the loop will wait once more for you.